Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's a pleasure to be here with you at the open source event. You've heard a lot about what open source can do. And what I would like to do is really take you through a short journey. The first thing is to talk about what drives IT spend. The second thing is what's available in open source, not just from Red Hat, but from other people. And then, what are the challenges in IT to support the business? Because we are in a period of incredible change at the moment, and it is challenging many of the internal IT groups. How do you take control of that IT? And then talk a little bit about the business outcome. First question here is, how many of you are in management in open source? Or not just in open source, but in general. How many of you are affected by budgets? Everybody's affected by budgets. How many people's budgets are going up? Oh, we've got one. Talk to me. Generally, budgets are a challenge. And if we look at the areas we spend money, you've got a level we call operational transformation. And that is typically running the business and changing and tweaking things. Then we have a level that we look at as IT transformation, and then the whole idea of what you're using your IT for is to transform the business, make it more agile, deliver better services, different services, somehow differentiate yourself from the competition. And literally 80% of the budget is spent at the bottom level, keeping the lights on, but there's very little flexibility there. And what we do see is 20% of the budget is literally allocated to innovation, which typically is some transformational projects, which will do things better, faster, cheaper, agility, and then to transform the business. And you've seen many ways business has been transformed, such as airline industry, online bookings, insurance industries, where things can be calculated as you go through the process. Many people have changed radically their business process, and that's an area of investment that delivers real bottom line. Now, generally, you need to put some solutions in place at the bottom line, and you have to carve that money out. It's difficult. But then that allows you then to spend a little more money on solutions for IT transformation. That tends to be around cloud. It tends to be around agility. And then finally, you try to put as much as you can into business transformation, which tends to be around the process, around integrating applications together to deliver different services. I'm going to take you through a journey of how open source can help you there. Because if you could transform your IT by taking cost out of that existing IT and then use more of that money for innovation, and what if you could get more from your innovation budget? You didn't have to spend as much money to get the same level of technology. And what would happen if you could use OpEx instead of CapEx to innovate? You would not have to go to the finance director for all that capital. You would have more freedom to do things. And this is where a lot of open source technology can help you stretch that budget. It can also help you move forwards in many ways around the agility side, around the integration side. And this is where I'm going to take you on a journey to help you. A little bit about Red Hat. Many of you use Red Hat, many of you know us, but we kind of developed the open source business model. And we added more and more technology to our business model, not just Linux. We've gone a long way, and I'll talk a little bit about that. But we're now roughly $1.7, $1.8 billion. We're about 7,500 people worldwide. We have millions of users now. And again, I think Werner showed the extent to which the technology touches everybody's daily life. Now, what we do is we take all that innovative, interesting technology and we make it safe to use in mission-critical corporate environments. Open source gives you freedom of choice and huge innovation, which is not necessarily a good thing in a big corporate data center where you have to support 24/7 operation. We provide that middle ground to take open source innovation, all of those thousands of projects, participate in them, integrate them, stabilize them, and then ship them in the same way a licensed software company would do. And the subscription model gives you all the kind of services you would expect. Many senior managers still wonder whether open source is safe. And when you see a presentation like Werner's, where every day you get on a plane, you're handing your life to open source, I think that's pretty mission critical. But again, these are the kind of services you expect from commercial licensed software. You get them from open source technology companies. We pioneered the model. And the beauty of it is you do not pay millions. Roughly 30% of your innovation budget can go on software licenses. That's a huge chunk of investment that you could take, use it for additional services, additional people, spend more time around the innovation side. Now, just to give you an example, and again, it might be a little bit of an eye chart by the time you get to the back of the room. If you look at all the different categories, operating system, platform as a service, cloud orchestration, virtualization, storage, everywhere you have proprietary technology on that list on the left, and we put some of the names in there, you've got a Red Hat technology product. Now that gives the CIO an incredible level of choice when they're looking at the strategy that they want to make to address the challenges we have. And I'm going to take you through the challenges that face people. But it gives you the opportunity, again, to take those license costs out of your next generation projects to make that innovation money go further. And it's not just Red Hat. The beauty of this event is that you have the ability to see what else is on the market, again using that open source model. Supported open source for enterprise use, completely free for test development, whatever you want to do around your own private areas. So it gives you an opportunity to innovate and then move safely into enterprise production. So there's a lot of choice now, and again, the biggest movement over the last year is OpenStack, which is generated by a desire to have an alternative from VMware. And that's being driven by the entire industry. So let's talk a little bit about the challenges now that we see. Werner talked a little bit about this demand for innovation and the innovation gap. I can guarantee that the business users in your organizations want things faster. They want them much more flexible. They want to deliver development quickly, and they want to deliver it at a significantly lower cost. And the challenge is traditional IT service delivery is getting tougher and tougher. So you have this innovation gap between what is desired and what is actually being delivered that is continuing to challenge. Now, the impact of this innovation gap is people get frustrated. What do when people get frustrated? They innovate. They go to the cloud. And you find this shadow IT start to happen. How many people in organizations are seeing shadow IT start to happen, people buying in applications using cloud services outside of standard IT structures? Who's using cloud here? Who's using software as a service? There's normally quite a lot of people quietly using different things, Amazon, EC2, you have people using applications in different departments, and it becomes a bit of a challenge. And the reason it's happening is because legacy. Everybody has legacy. You can't invent the world in 6 days if you have legacy. You need a clean sheet of paper, but nobody has a clean sheet of paper unless you're building a brand new company. So we have the challenge that most of these technologies, bare metal, virtual, private cloud, public cloud, they typically aren't that well connected. There are barriers between them. And then there's another area of challenge, is the security and safety of external cloud. Werner mentioned the NSA. If you're running stuff inside external cloud providers, do you know that it's secure? Do you know that you can trust everything that they do? And do they have the same standards for disaster recovery that you expect? Then at the application level, I think there was something like 450 applications in the ARIMA. Everybody's got applications. They're all different shapes and sizes. Some are in the cloud, some are outside, but generally they're not linked. The challenge is, if you're going to run an integrated business, you actually need integrated applications. So fundamentally, we find that every company that we talk to can look at that diagram and say, I have siloed IT, I have non-integrated applications, I can't innovate as fast, I can't do it for the price I want, and people are going outside to the cloud. How do I get control back? So the other big issue is the cloud going to be open or closed? It has the chance of being the mother of all lock-ins. If you end up with one cloud provider that has a lock-in interface, you will not have the flexibility to build, grow, and be able to pick and choose. And lock-in is another area that open source helps address. So, how do we gain control of a situation like this? First thing is that when people are investigating their next generation strategy, because of the amount of people who've suffered from lock-in, open is a key element to that strategy. 72% of a survey that was done by, I believe it was IDC, said open is a key part of the strategy of the move to cloud. I need flexibility. I do not want lock-in. The second thing is, how do we fix each of these different layers? And at the bottom layer, the idea of creating infrastructure as a service, because the internal IT groups are now competing with Amazon, where you can spin up a server in seconds. Just plug your credit card in, spin it up, you're done. Many people take months to deliver a server internal IT. It's a challenge. And this is an area that we've invested. When we take our entire stack of products, what I want to take you on a journey is show how they all fit into this idea of how you build an open hybrid cloud with integrated applications to be able to address this challenge. So we start with something called Red Hat Cloud Forms. If we take a look at this, we have got all of this heterogeneous IT, it's not connected. What if you could put a unified operations management over that and be able to move applications in and out of each of those silos, move them from the cloud to your virtual, move them from internal private cloud to external cloud? What if you could run them in all the environments and actually scale? And do that with the ability to do things like discovery, capacity planning, reporting, being able to do application lifecycle management, put a layer on the top that gave you complete control of your entire IT system. That's where we position Cloud Forms. It allows people to put an overarching management layer in place. And the nice thing about it is, apart from breaking the barriers between the individual silos, you can also start thinking about how do I break the lock-in that potentially a VMware environment or a Microsoft virtualization environment could have. What if you could then have a single management platform that didn't care what hypervisor was underneath, giving you the ability then to consider lower cost alternatives in virtualization, still have complete control. And then idea of then building a unified storage environment out of commoditized hardware, taking the cost out of your storage environment, providing a global namespace. There you have the ability to take your infrastructure and build self-service, billing, management, application lifecycle across the entire hardware layer. So now we take this as part of the journey from how to create infrastructure as a service to actually delivering this unified operating and management platform, which then takes out of these individual silos and also takes care of the security issue around the cloud, because you can now pick and choose which of the cloud providers you use. The next layer is really looking at how can you get this speed, the flexibility, and the lower cost. And that typically is involved in your development environment. How can you accelerate, deliver flexibility, and reduce cost in the development of next generation applications? Werner mentioned the 50 million users in 3 weeks. What if you were 3 weeks late to market with your product and the first 50 million were now with your competition? That's the speed at which you now have to deliver applications. So how can we take this challenge? And this is what we call the platform as a service layer challenge. And if we now take a look inside our development environments, you've got a classic situation where you have the developers. They want access to all the different kinds of hardware. And every developer has his favorite application development environment. There's different developer tools, different languages, different packaged apps. Generally chaos. Actually managing a development environment, managing standards, managing the availability of machines is one of the biggest challenges. And we put operations in place to try to manage that, but at the same time that creates a block to the developers. Do they start? Do they do it themselves? Do they wait for operations? Do they go to the cloud? So the big challenge with the developers is wait or do it yourself. And the big challenge for operations is how do I stop these guys doing what they want? Because they could be a whole raft of stuff that they're going to do. They may not have the right revisions of code, they might have the right revisions of development tools. Now integrate and maintain that. And all of the big challenges at setup times, productivity control, roughly half of developer time is wasted doing this kind of stuff and generally going against the operations people. So what if we could start with that concept, but then take the development environments, the availability of hardware, and actually transform that into a platform as a service, where your operations team can put together, if you like, the Chinese menu of all the development environments, all of the facilities that the developers can have, but they get self-service. They can spin up their environments in a controlled fashion, but they get it immediately. What you then see, and this is typical of the results when you put platform as a service in some of our organizations that we work with, instead of taking 3 weeks to set up a development environment, development team, you're talking 15 minutes. You know, you can set it up, you've got all of the technology available, it's all self-service. The enablement of flexibility to switch projects, to switch development environments, to be able to use and reuse code, again, that's the kind of thing platform as a service gets. And when you can develop 50, 60% more applications with the same team, guess what? You push the cost down. You become more competitive because you're getting more out of the people you've got. And that's the area that we put in place a technology called OpenShift Enterprise, which is an on-premise platform as a service. If you want to try OpenShift, it's available online. OpenShift Online, Google it, you can go set up a development platform, you can play with it, you can try it. But we're seeing many of the big banks, many of the big telcos looking at using this as a solution for this very problem. How do I coordinate 200, 300, 500, sometimes 2,000 developers and actually get that productivity? So it's platform as a service. So now we fix that, what do we do about the next level? So at the next level, it's the application level. And here we have a whole new set of challenges. So here we have the classic normal use. You have the SAPs, the logistics applications, the HR applications, all of these different technologies being used by the average users, not necessarily connected. The concept then is to take JBoss Fuse, it's a service bus. And we now start to integrate these applications. What you see then is you can start to have application integration. You can move traffic between the applications. You can start to get the synergy between the applications. But generally, your creative developers or creative business units will start bringing in cloud applications. So they'll still not get what they want, so they'll go outside, CRM. They may have some marketing analytics tools. And guess what? You could then connect those guys. So you extend the connectivity. You're now looking at a complete application fabric. Where does this lead us to? The next area is you have mobile workers or mobile customers, even mobile banking applications. And typically you end up with a whole set of mobile applications and interfaces that you now need to connect into your service bus. Again, that's part of what Fuse does. It helps connect the mobile applications into the enterprise applications and also integrate them with the cloud. So now you're starting to see a complete fabric. But what else is going to be needed? Your creative people will want to say, I'd like to take application one, the software as a service, and the mobile, and do something on top of that. Because I can be creative now. So now we start adding a layer that Gartner called XPaaS, which is platform as a service on top. And when you look at the suite that JBoss has, you've got the classic Java-based enterprise application server, and then you can start to build new Java applications using data from all of these different systems. But you may want to move up a level and start to program with rules. So now you start to build a very agile, change at the speed of business platform. You can use Java, you use business rules. Many of the really big platforms that have to run major business is now starting to move up to business rules, just for the sheer agility, to be able to create high-level programs with business analysts that then go straight into operation. What else would you need to do? You need business process, because again, moving from application system, this is all about competitive edge within the customer. Being able to have a really slick process that deals with all the different technologies. But you may also have external data that you want to integrate, so you have the ability to do data virtualization, not just take the processes and services here, but have integrated external data sources, all looking like one single database. And then finally, as you get more and more traffic, you may want to accelerate this. So JBoss Data Grid is in-memory data to be able to accelerate the performance of web applications. We used to do 7 transactions before we bought an airline ticket when we used to have to make a phone call to a travel agent. They'd phone the airline, 7 transactions, they'd come back with a set of flights you buy. The average airline will take 40,000 transactions before it sells a single ticket. Based on all the search sites, so everybody looking at everything, all the different flight options, 40,000 transactions. They need to push that into memory, speed up the operation, so that one transaction that uses the back end is actually effective. And again, this is an area we see that as part of the application strategy. And then you've got the ability to put portals in place to be able to run all of this and then design your own user interfaces. So you have literally an entire application XPath stack that you can build. So now if we look at that layer, we have the ability now to take those chains away and start to move an integrated XPath application platform to sit on top of this. So what I've shown you here is how you would take the infrastructure as a service layer, the platform as a service layer, and then the application, the XPath layer, and start to build a coherent approach. Not only that, it's open. It's also hybrid because you still have your existing infrastructure, and it's definitely based on cloud because you can pull cloud in, you can use software as a service applications integrated with your own site. So it's not about how to gain control. Now you have control. It's what do you want to do with it. So if we take a look at some of the business outcomes, we've got companies, telecommunications companies using technology to build clouds. We've got government of Canarias who used Red Hat technology to replace VMware. We've got technologies like DreamWorks that use infrastructure as a service to be able to provision 40 to 50,000 servers to do all the rendering for the next movie, because if they miss a holiday break, Easter or Christmas, they can have a huge revenue hit because that's when all the children are away from school and they go to see all these movies. So again, all of this is critical, mission critical. Amazon, without saying, is part of the cloud area. We actually run OpenShift in that. ING, DBA, is an entire online bank. Their entire competitiveness is servicing 3 million customers with only 300 employees. And their real critical element is how can they develop new services. They set up an entire platform as a service application factory, developed a 50% improvement in their delivery of applications. So again, we've got absolute proof of exactly how customers use this. You could start almost anywhere on any of those 3 levels, depending on what your biggest challenge is in terms of managing the budget or getting the innovation. But the beauty of it is that there is now enough flexibility and enough choice in the entire open source portfolios that you can do this kind of thing without spending a single cent on a commercial license. I think I'm almost finished. I'd like to just say why Red Hat. Well, firstly, we have a very customer-focused business model. And because we're open source, you're invited to get engaged even at the technology level, at the open source level. And it allows you to do that innovation in a faster but in a very safe way, especially if you're running 24/7 businesses. So I'd like to finish the presentation with a word from one of our customers. I'm not sure if they're in the room, but they're actually local. So we'll take you through a customer journey.
ING Services Polska jest centrum usług wspólnych, który w pełni należy do holenderskiej grupy bankowej ING. W Polsce prowadzimy operacje IT, dostarczając usługi informatyczne dla naszych partnerów na całym świecie. Firma ING Services Polska została założona w 2003 roku. Od tego czasu bardzo dynamicznie się rozwijamy, osiągając tempo 20% rok do roku. Nasze pierwotne usługi opierały się na tradycyjnych systemach, które pomimo swojej wysokiej niezawodności charakteryzowały się relatywnie wysokim kosztem. Obecnie klienci oczekują od nas tej samej jakości usług i bardzo wysokiego poziomu bezpieczeństwa, jednak przy radykalnie niższych kosztach jednostkowych. Stąd właśnie w 2007 roku stanęliśmy przed dużym wyzwaniem związanym z radykalną zmianą architektury i technologii, na podstawie których świadczymy nasze usługi.
Kolejnym problemem związanym z dostarczeniem platformy był czas. który był potrzebny na dostarczenie tego rozwiązania. Zazwyczaj były to tygodnie, jak nie miesiące.
Naszym wyzwaniem było poszukiwanie nowych technologii, które dawałyby tą samą jakość i bezpieczeństwo usług.
Szukaliśmy rozwiązania, które będzie dość popularne na rynku. Z drugiej strony szukaliśmy rozwiązania, które będzie pozwalało nam się uniezależnić od jednego dostawcy, jak również które pozwoli obniżyć koszty prowadzenia nowych usług.
Po rozpoznaniu rynkowym zdecydowaliśmy się na wybór Red Hat Linux i Red Hat JBoss Application Server.
Przetestowaliśmy rozwiązanie Red Hata w naszym środowisku i to pozwoliło nam tak naprawdę przekonać się, że działa ono tak, jak potrzebujemy.
W grupie ING bazujemy na zestandaryzowanych stosach technologicznych, co oznacza, że nasi inżynierowie połączyli produkty Red Hat w logiczne tak zwane staki, czyli najczęstszą naszą kombinacją jest właśnie Red Hat Linux z JBossem jako serwerem aplikacyjnym, bardzo często też z Tomcatem.
Dzisiaj dostarczamy Red Hat Enterprise Linuxa głównie jako rozwiązania wirtualne. Dodatkowo używamy Satellite Servera, co pozwala nam na szybkie dostarczanie usługi dla naszych klientów.
Wdrożenie Red Hat Enterprise Linux i Red Hat JBoss Middleware pozwoliło nam obniżyć koszty jednostkowe o 2/3.
Użycie produktów Red Hata pozwoliło nam na dostarczanie usług dla naszych klientów i znaczne skrócenie czasu dostarczania platformy, tak naprawdę z tygodni do dni.
Od czasu wprowadzenia technologii Red Hat udało nam się znacząco zwiększyć ilość hostowanych systemów.
Wprowadzenie Red Hata pozwoliło nam na znaczne obniżenie kosztu dostarczania usług dla naszego biznesu, jak również pozwoliło wykorzystać wirtualizację, co daje elastyczność w dostarczaniu platformy.
Podjęliśmy w 2007 strategiczną decyzję o bardzo zdecydowanym wejściu w technologię open source. Myślę, że byliśmy jednym z pierwszych klientów w sektorze bankowym, który w bardzo zdecydowany i masowy sposób zdecydował się w wejście w technologie open source'owe. Decyzja ta okazała się dla nas bardzo dobra w skutkach, ponieważ pozwoliła nam osiągnąć przewagę kosztową, dzięki którym mogliśmy zaoferować naszym klientom bardzo innowacyjną platformę, która bezpośrednio przełożyła się na znaczący wzrost sprzedaży.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Phil.